about the 2010s, a time where CG became prominent in the world of mainstream feature animation and phased out 2D traditional animation. Pixar churned out sequels, and Disney followed suit not long after. Illumination did their thing with the Minions. DreamWorks continued to be hit and miss, but that didn't mean 2D was dead entirely. Since the 2010s contain a lot of my formative years, this means a number of these animated movies hold a lot of significance to me. In other words, I'm gonna yap, so this video is gonna be a long one. A lot of these will likely be ones you don't recognize, and that's fine. It gives you a chance to take a step outside the mainstream and see what independent works have to offer. This video is ranked by my personal subjective opinion, so it's kind of an excuse for me to talk about my favorite movies, but it also gave me an opportunity to revisit or experience some for the first time to see if they make it on this list. I don't think I need more of an introduction, so let's take a trip down memory lane and begin, shall we? Cue the aesthetic lo-fi / piano montages. We're starting off on a chipper note, aren't we? Not to be confused with The Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, though I don't know about you, but I would much rather vibe with Mr. Rogers than spend a second in Bill's fractured psyche. Am I right? If you want a movie that'll make you feel incredibly empty inside, yep, this is it. An existential yet quite fascinating journey through the mind of a man simply named Bill. Rewatching this movie made me go down a Don Hertzfeldt rabbit hole where I watched a bunch of his short films, which was definitely an experience.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
Okay.
This movie has such a wondrous blend of live-action footage and simple stick figures with absolutely unique shot composition. Other than that, it kind of renders me speechless, though I typically prefer watching movies that are not as emotionally and as existentially heavy. But his bath mats are gorgeous. What else can I say? It may not be my favorite of Mamoru Hosoda's work, but Wolf Children is still very much a worthwhile addition to his filmography, even with that one scene. It's a tale as old as time, the lo-fi study girl doing the devil's tango with a werewolf. Classic, right? Well, the movie's called Wolf Children for a reason, and it's about the lo-fi study girl Hana having to raise them after tragedy strikes Jacob, or whatever his name was. It's fascinating to watch Yuki and Ame grow and become their own individuals, how one day in the snow can lead them on completely separate paths in life. There's this one tracking shot that spans years, and the camera goes back and forth on their classroom and shows their varying participation in school. Oh my gosh, it's genius. I also love the part when they get sick and Hana doesn't know whether or not she should take them to the vet or doctor. It's also compelling to see her adjust to being a single mom and having to learn the ways of the countryside. Great slice of life, great family drama, great anime, great movie overall. If I said this was my least favorite of Makoto Shinkai's disaster trilogy featuring Yunosuke Kamiki and songs from Radwimps, then what? The movie's still great though, I swear. If anything, it's gotten better the older I get. It was my third time watching this movie and it's coming around on me. I remember having trouble connecting with it when I first saw it sometime before the pandemic, but I find it resonating with me more as time goes on, especially the thing with someone close to you slipping through your fingertips to the point that your memory of them feels like a distant dream. Yeah. Anyway, body swapping stories are always fun to watch, and even though it gets phased out about halfway through and I sorta begin losing interest, it picks me right back up with that gripping third act, and whoo. And if there's anything I've learned from Weathering with You and Suzume, it's that Radwimps make some absolute headbangers. My gosh, they are so good. Speaking of stuff that's so good, this animation, absolutely to die for. This is probably the biggest non-Ghibli anime movie, and while it's not my favorite, you should still check it out if you haven't already. This is technically quote-unquote low on the list, I just happen to like the other movies more, but it's one that certainly deserves to be talked about, especially now. The Tower was a last-minute addition to my stop-motion ranking I made last year after going down Wikipedia's list of films one last time, and I am very glad I included it. It's about a young Palestinian girl named Vardy who lives in a refugee camp in Beirut, and while talking with her family members across various generations, she learns more about al-Nakba, the catastrophe that made them forced to move to Lebanon in the first place. Its stop motion is charming, and while the 2D segments in the past aren't exactly pretty to look at, these certainly weren't pretty times in history. I may not have a large platform here or on other sites, but they are platforms regardless, and I like to use it for things I'm passionate about, which includes underappreciated animated movies and terrible things that are happening in the world. We all share this planet, we can't simply ignore what's going on in Palestine. It's a good introduction that makes you realize this has been going on far longer than you thought. The movie shows joyous moments before al-Nakba and in Vardy's life, but it is absolutely not afraid to get dark and terribly violent as well. So go watch it and free Palestine.
If we don't know our past, where we come from, what are we? Nothing.
If you like shots of hands, you're gonna love this movie. It's very French, it's very indie, and I think it's great. I especially love just how many scenes don't have dialogue, whether or not it's following the sentient hand. I was debating whether or not I should watch the sub or dub this time around, but I stuck to the dub for Dev Patel, baby. There isn't really too much dialogue, so I don't think it would have mattered in the long run. It's a melancholy and atmospheric film with an iffy romance that thankfully gets called out. This was my third time watching this, and I was surprised I found myself still getting invested in the struggles of the poor little hand, even grimacing during the build-up of that scene near the end. If I had nails, I would have bitten them. Ooh, too soon? I think this time the sound design and especially the score stood out to me, which would make sense since the dialogue is taken a backseat. Trust me, this will not be the last time I talk about a movie's soundtrack. If you're looking for a good indie movie, I definitely recommend this one. It's on Netflix, though I will be talking about many more down the list. But the next film is the very opposite of indie. The movie, I'm sure, has become a staple in Spanish classes across the nation. I say that as someone who did watch this in Spanish class one time. I took 5 years of it and I've forgotten most of it, lo siento. Teacher should show La Casa Lobo next, I'll show them. Fork them, kids. Where was I? Oh yeah, Coco was one of the few original Pixar movies to have been released in this decade, and it is great. Vibrant animation, nice soundtrack, I still adore La Llorona, and this has some of my favorite Pixar characters too. Hector has a great scene presence, I even feel more and more for him as the movie goes on. I love Imelda being the patriarch, and hot damn, she was so real for learning to make shoes. Good for her. I love her Freudian slip as she calls Hector the love of her life and then denies it 2 seconds later. And Ernesto de la Cruz is one of the better villains to come out from this era too.
You know, some guys just can't hold their arsenic.
It was a murder, but not a crime. Okay, can I just go back to praising La Llorona now? The original song is in the public domain, so can I just say this is a damn good needle drop? It's genuinely my favorite scene of the movie. The way Hector gazes at Imelda with so much love and gives her an encouraging nod, the way Imelda smiles and her confidence swells just as Michael Giacchino's skeleton conductor and his orchestra start accompanying. It's at that moment right there she forgives Hector, and it's so heart-melting. And the way she leaps onto him and shyly tucks hair behind her non-existent ear, oh my gosh, shut up! Aside from that, I don't exactly love the movie the way everyone else does. It's a 10 out of 10 scene and otherwise 8 out of 10 movie. The breakup between Miguel and Hector makes me go yeah, and some of the comedy feels like it's trying too hard to get a laugh from the audience by the way it's delivered.
Achoo! Terribly allergic.
But Dante doesn't have any hair.
And I don't have a nose, and yet here we are.
Maybe I just prefer my jokes to be delivered more dryly.
Chorizo!
I still consider it one of my favorite Pixar movies, and it reminds me that they know their stuff, you know? Remember when Alan Menken did music for Disney movies? No. Remember when Alan Menken did music for good Disney movies? Yeah, I miss it too. I admit I'm not the biggest fan of I See the Light. I'm more of a Mother Knows Best loyalist, but it's definitely one of Disney's best sequences from this decade. The floating lanterns, how they reflect off the peaceful water, and it makes it look like Rapunzel and Eugene are floating in midair. Ugh, how do people come up with this stuff? Makes me want to go to one of these in person. I know they're bad for the environment, but pretty. Back to the movie. It's a fun adventure with our two leads having great camaraderie, but that means I've been swayed by Zachary Levi's charisma. Damn it, Mother Gothel is probably the last Disney villain to emulate that classic era, even if she's a less extreme and memorable version of Frollo. But like I said, I love her songs with how they're so manipulative in completely different ways, all thanks to the instrumentals, which are like night and day, but in the best way. Kingdom Dance is also a fantastic track from the score. It's such a great way to show the passage of time in a single afternoon with next to no dialogue. Rapunzel feeling a sense of familiarity with the lost princess, Eugene starting to really fall for her, the music leading us on with them trying to dance together until the very last second. Magnifique. And let me just say, I don't think people realize how much of an absolute marvel it was to animate Rapunzel's hair. So many strands that all have to act accordingly with physics. Not to mention it looks so thick and soft and shiny, it's still stunning 14 years later. That is the definition of hair goals. I mean, I'm getting there. Right? I've heard good things about the series, but I still need to check it out. Anyway, a really solid movie, though I can personally find elements similar to it in better films. From the iconic French director Michel Osselot, it's an anthology about a man, a boy, and a girl creating and performing stories in a theater every night. They discuss who will be playing who, design their costumes, then with each tale we the audience are transported to various locations across the world, from an Aztec kingdom, the mountains in Tibet, and the land of the dead beneath the Caribbean. They're very simple, straightforward stories, but with a wide variety of tones, settings, and time periods. I'm not kidding, one of the stories is about a young boy outsmarting a king, and when he allows him to marry his daughter the princess, the boy says, "Nah, I gotta go back home." He pieces out and it just ends, and I honestly love the movie for that. The film's execution of these stories makes it a sight to behold. Using computer silhouette animation, it allows the backgrounds to be absolute eye candy. I really need to check out more of Osselot's work because this was a great start. Overall, it's a really unique movie that barely anyone talks about, even for international animation standards, and I wish more people knew it, so check it out. Yes, I put this above your name and it's such a beautiful day, but hear me out. My rebuttal is just I like it more, but hear me out. In a well-ordered universe, this would have been DreamWorks' next successful acclaimed franchise. What a shame this underperformed, because there truly is some great stuff in here. I absolutely love the inventive world building, the creative reimagining of the childhood icons, like the Tooth Fairy being a humanoid hummingbird, while Santa, or rather North, is an intimidating, tattooed, Russian, sword-wielding tower of a man with childlike wonder. And of course, I love me some Chris frickin' Pine. I love how they created Jack Frost to be a fun-loving goofball, since before that I perceived him as a genuine evil trickster, mainly because of his appearance in the Rainbow Magic books. Does anyone else remember those? Anyway, maybe it has to do with the presence of Sandman, and I'll bring it up with a couple other movies down the list, but there's something dream-like about it that speaks to me. I can't explain it, but I've always vibed with this movie. Now, is it perfect? No. I do think Jude Law has a good performance as Pitch with an established backstory and motive, but in execution it doesn't hit the same as other DreamWorks villains. Maybe they delve deeper into it in the books. And not to judge a book by its cover or anything, but I'm surprised I never read them. I feel like a little bookworm me would have been obsessed with them. Well, regardless, it's still a really fun movie. The Guardians going around the world collecting teeth is entertaining. They overall bounce well off each other, and I do imagine they've known each other for a long time. I'm in the camp who's advocating for a sequel because I would love to learn more about the story's lore and Guardians' backstories. A Puss in Boots sequel came out a decade after the first movie, and look how well that turned out. Well, I suppose I shall keep on believing. Now, Olivia, you may be wondering, did you have a crush on Jack when you were younger? Were you one of those freaks who shipped Jelsa when this movie came out? Listen, it was a different time. I may have been too young to own a Tumblr account, but that didn't mean I couldn't scroll through Google Images and save my favorite fan art to my camera roll. Can we move on, please? The following movie is one I haven't watched in almost 15 years. I saw it when it came out in theaters, and to be completely honest with you, I just wasn't a fan. I've been meaning to revisit for years, and this video finally gave me a chance to do so. With that said, I present to you I'll start off by reading my letterboxd review because I really do think I put it best there. So like I said, to be completely honest with you, I wasn't a fan. I remember thinking, why is his name Hiccup? That's a stupid name, and his voice is annoying. I think I also found it boring. Because of this, I haven't seen anything How to Train Your Dragon since until now. I had a black cat with green eyes named Pooh Bear, and I remember my aunt would tell me that his personality reminded her of Toothless and that it could have been his name. In another life, if 7-year-old me fell in love with How to Train Your Dragon, it probably would have been. Now I wish it was. Or maybe he would have been stuck with what I originally wanted to call him, Rainbow Sparkles. Again, I was 7. So yeah, I thought it was great this time around. I was just obsessed with Toothless because of how cat-coded he is, and I could totally see the comparisons my aunt was making. I thought the lighting and cinematography was awesome. There was this backlit shot of Astrid that really stood out to me, and then I found out the one and only Roger Deakins was a visual consultant, so it's no wonder this movie looks so good. I also really like John Powell's score. Romantic Flight truly is beautiful. I definitely sense Kung Fu Panda vibes listening to the soundtrack. Obviously it doesn't have Chinese instrumentals, but I could still feel it with its grandeur and distinct leitmotifs. Seeing Hiccup and Toothless bond was adorable, like OMG me and who, am I right? I could see why this became such a big franchise. And if you're wondering what I think about the sequel, well, I think part of me is going back and forth on them, but for right now I'll say I like this just a smidge more, I think. Like, a pretty major character dies. Whoa! Like with he and Toothless, I really liked seeing Hiccup bond with his mom, her reuniting with Stoic, and their time together is really sweet. Hiccup and Astrid were also adorable, though I didn't find the comedy all that funny, and it's nice to hear I'm not alone in that. It's considered to be the weakest aspect of the trilogy. This one got a pretty big laugh out of me though.
Take me.
I love the expansion on the world building, how this franchise grows up with its audience, and how the characters mature, most of them. And man, I wish I gave this franchise another shot at some point when I was younger. Oh well, what could have been? Well, I guess it's good I have Kung Fu Panda, and I think I'll always be loyal to that one as my favorite DreamWorks franchise. Never heard of the 4th one though, so don't ask me about it. And if you're wondering what I think about the threequel, well, I think it's the weakest from the trilogy, but it's still good. Anyway, here's a different movie for you. No joke, this is one of the most gorgeous animated movies I've seen. I mean, are you seeing this? It serves as a prequel to one of China's oldest and most famous tales, The Legend of the White Snake. A female snake demon finds herself in a village having lost her memory while she sparks a romance with a man named Xuan. Well, it kind of turns into more than that, but meanwhile, she's being pursued by a general and emperor since snakes are being used to make themselves more powerful. Do I think this movie's perfect? No. Xiaobai and Xuan are no Jack and Rose. There's a talking dog who, while isn't infuriatingly annoying, you could very well take him out of the story, and the third act feels like it goes on for a while. Though the two leads do have genuine bonding moments, there's a snake kaiju battle. In fact, all the wuxia action scenes are fun to watch, and amazing character designs from her and her sister's human, snake, and hybrid forms. And this owner of a magical shop who can twist her neck and speak with the fox head, it is quite creative if I do say so myself. And while I find pop songs that play during the credits to be hit or miss, I love Genesis by Zhu Shen. In fact, I've been listening to a piano cover of it while I've been talking about this movie. The link is in the description if you want to hear the whole thing. I highly recommend checking out the original too. Zhu has such a hypnotic voice. This was my first Chinese animated movie, or donghua, and it turns out he's done a lot of songs for them. Oh, and also, if you've ever had the movie Green Snake pop up in your recommendations on Netflix and you wonder if that's related, the answer is yes. It's a spin-off to Xiaobai's sister Xiaoqing. I've seen people watch it without watching the first, so I guess that means you can too. It's a Netflix original, even though White Snake isn't. I don't know, distribution be like that. Though the third movie in this franchise is a direct sequel to White Snake, and it recently came out in China, so hopefully it gets released in the US soon. But back to the first movie, it's a fascinating world to explore where demons are shunned by humans, and I have to reiterate that it is absolutely stunning to look at. The landscapes and the colors just leap off the screen. While the facial expressions are at the most animated, there's still a human quality to them, and they emote a lot by just a look in their eyes. Xiaobai in her snake form especially conveys emotions incredibly well. Again, it's no masterpiece, but it's a definite recommendation for the animation alone. Just because I don't have How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World on here, that doesn't mean there's not another DreamWorks threequel. This may be controversial, but the reason why it's this high is because of my attachment to this franchise. It's my video, sue me. It's not as emotionally complex as the first two, though it may be the best looking visually. The predecessors are every frame of painting worthy, so that's some serious high praise. I love how they bring back Oogway in a way that makes narrative sense. The scene of him and Po in the spirit realm is one of my favorites in the whole franchise. Mr. Ping, the god among men that he is, teaming up with Lee is really satisfying. Kai is a decent enough villain. He definitely has one heck of a leitmotif. And I like how he's connected to Oogway in a way similar to how Tai Lung and Shen are to Shifu and Po. I don't think I love Kung Fu Panda 3 as much as I used to, but I still have a big soft spot for it. Though I guess the bright side to this is that it's not the weakest movie in the franchise anymore. That's a shame. Now let's tone it down a little bit. What I mean is that instead of a film produced by hundreds of hardworking people working for a major studio, I instead want to talk about a movie that was produced by one singular guy all the way in the European country of Latvia. I give you Away has this dreamlike quality that I am simply enamored with. It's about a young boy, who looks like Hogarth from the Iron Giant for some reason, who traverses across this mysterious island after surviving a plane crash. Insert Lost reference here. The chicken and broccoli fettuccine alfredo I made that night might have helped my enjoyment, but man, I just think this movie hits the spot. Not only is it created entirely by one person, Ginsubo Lotus, who directed, produced, wrote, composed, and edited the whole thing. I'm not kidding, the credits are only 20 seconds long. The movie doesn't even have any dialogue, so it's just the visuals and music telling the story. The score is really ethereal and atmospheric, and I listen to it all the time while I'm studying or working on videos. It's admittedly a simple movie, and I can see how it won't work for everyone, but it certainly works for me. And Hideo Kojima has praised it, and even though I'm not a gamer, I know how significant he is, so this is some serious high praise. Gintz has another silent movie featuring a cute little cat that premiered at the Cannes and Annecy Film Festivals a few months ago called Flow that has gotten quite a bit of buzz I'm really looking forward to. It's coming out in the States late November, so you all can be on the lookout for it. In the meantime, check out Away and be whisked away. I don't know, that's all I got. Go watch it. Hey, did you like Godzilla Minus One? If so, I present to you another film directed by Takashi Yamazaki that is a wonderful addition to a long-running franchise of a beloved character in Japanese pop culture. And they say anime can't look good in 3D. Guys, this movie slaps. Just slaps. I wouldn't say I know everything about Lupin the Third. Aside from this, I've only seen 2 other movies so far, but I would call myself a fan of this franchise, to the point that part of me wants a yellow Fiat 500 now. Lupin has a debonair yet quirky charm that is so easy to love, stupid resting DreamWorks face and all, though I know that personality can vary widely depending on what adaptation you're watching or reading. It's a super fun globe-trotting adventure with super fun characters, Jigen my beloved, and super fun action set pieces. I mean, the freeway scene, the scene with the hat and laser tunnel, is just way too damn good. And I will say this definitely has the best opening credits for any movie on this list. Ugh, just look at it. Takashi Yamazaki is a really good director, guys. I don't know if any of you know that. If this is your introduction to the franchise, I'd say it's a great pick. And even though this is far from being an origin story for our gang, you can immediately feel their personalities and decades-old camaraderie through their banter. Like, it was really nice to see Zenigata be an ally for a bit. He's so campy. He's fantastic.
There's one guy who would come for me anywhere in the world. Oh, hello.
The movie also takes quite the crazy turn when it comes to a certain historical figure I dare not spoil here. There's no news about a sequel as of now, even though it kind of leaves it open-ended, but if we do get one, I would welcome it with open arms. Yamazaki-san! Nudge nudge wink wink. If you have yet to join Lupin and his friends on their crazy adventures, there's no better time to do it than now. We're at the halfway point, so let's take a quick break and list some honorable mentions, shall we? Toy Story 3. Yeah, it's good. We all know it's good. Sad ending, incinerator scene great, the sky is blue, blah blah blah. It's just that I've always simply liked the Toy Story movies, not even enough to have a favorite. What else do you want from me? Neja. It takes inspiration from DreamWorks' worst qualities, but man, that third act goes hard. Also isn't too bad of an intro to Chinese animation and mythology. Big Fish in Begonia. The best way to describe this is as a lost Miyazaki film, but if it was produced in China and takes place in the spirit realm. It may lose its momentum as it goes on, but I am so drawn by how dreamlike it feels. I just wish I liked it more. Frozen 2. I love the soundtrack. Moving on. The Lego Movie 2, the second part. Another sequel I have a soft spot for. It sucks that the hype for the WB Lego movies died out so quickly. The Wolf House. Horror isn't exactly my cup of tea, but I can't deny the absolute craftsmanship in this movie. From frame-by-frame paintings on walls to three-dimensional stop-motion puppets, it needs to be seen to be believed. Mononoke's fantastic tale. Some of the most delightful character animation I ever did see in an animated movie. But know what you're getting yourself into, especially if you're a dog person. Liz and the Bluebird. A charming story about 2 girls' friendship that drift apart with a colorful side plot that goes along with it. It's a spin-off to this anime I haven't watched, but as I say whenever I recommend Arcane to someone, that's the cool thing about it. You don't need to know anything about the source material. However, I am much more willing to check out Sound Euphonium than League of Legends. Moana. Oh hey, my boss is in this movie. Ain't that neat? Ah yes, I remember there was a time when Disney went back to their bread and butter and weren't so try-hard about it. You'll see in this video that I favor non-Disney movies from this decade, but Moana is still great. Wonderful animation. Mwah. Mwah. Love me animated by Luminescence, and one of my favorite Disney soundtracks. Lin-Manuel Miranda is a super talented songwriter. Who'da thunk? Now let's go back to the aesthetic lo-fi montages with... where is it? An aesthetic lo-fi montage I'm so proud of. I took it straight from my best movies of 2021 video. Hopefully I don't plagiarize myself further by restating what I said from there verbatim, though from what I remember my thoughts do still hold up. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, both the movie and the video, the film's about this adorable tiny little baby cat demon named Xiaohei who loses his home from a nasty, despicable species called the Homo sapiens. While searching for a new home, he befriends other spirits, but then he gets kid and cat napped by another spirit, and it turns into actually a really enjoyable and sweet road trip movie. And that's all I'm saying because it evolves into this big climax I don't want to spoil. Though Ne Zha makes an appearance, it's basically the Chinese equivalent of a Marvel cameo since he's one of the most famous folk legends in China. The movie has a lot of heart, and the center of that is Xiaohei and Wuxian with their really touching dynamic as they warm up to each other. Just look at Xiaohei, he's so cute. I just wanna And yes, Xiaohei and Wuxian, not Hei and Master Infinity. The dub does the thing where it westernizes the characters' names, and it's so stupid. On that note, if you can, please watch the sub. It's not that I'm anti-dub, I mean, it's just this one in particular I'm not a fan of. But aside from that, I love this movie. The animation's vibrant and gorgeous. There's awesome fight scenes, especially the one on the subway. It's hilarious with its dry humor and occasional slapstick. It's really fun to see these mythological people and creatures interact with the modern world, and there's great discussion about the balance of nature and humanity and if nature has the right to take back what was stolen from them, like Princess Mononoke and Pompoko. Also, I guess I should mention I'll include this in my You Don't Need to Know About the Source Material club, since it's actually a prequel movie to a Chinese web series called The Legend of Luo Xiaohe. There's about 40 episodes, and I watched most of them shortly after seeing the movie for the first time, though I should probably rewatch it and check out the rest. They're free on YouTube, so I recommend it, as well as the movie, of course, which is another great way to start getting into Donghua.
He had a breakdown. It happens to people.
They're weak.
Live longer. You'll see. Life can even bring down the strong.
So the thing is, I wasn't a fan of this movie during my first 2 watches. Yeah, the fact that each and every frame is hand-painted in the style of Vincent van Gogh was absolutely mind-blowing and undeniably still is, but I wasn't engaged. But some way, somehow, after the second viewing, I started looking into the life of the tragic artist and became fascinated by him. Before I knew it, I was listening to Vincent by Don McLean so often it started making me cry, and I was moved by other Van Gogh movies like At Eternity's Gate and Akira Kurosawa's Dreams. I came back to it and it dawned on me that these aren't just characters and settings, but real portraits and landscapes Vincent painted throughout his lifetime. Personally, I would have liked to see almond blossoms, but Learning more about his life gave me so much more context and appreciation for this film than ever before, where one of the subjects of Van Gogh's portraits interviews other subjects about their opinions and eyewitness accounts on the elusive death of the artist. From judgmental thoughts about him being a madman to praising a tormented genius, we see various perspectives. I talk about the animation, am I right? The flashbacks are in black and white and the shadows contrast so sharply with light. Even the smoke is hand-painted. I still haven't seen Breakthrough Films' new movie The Peasants, but people aren't talking about these titanic feats of animation enough. With AI becoming ever present in the entertainment industry with every passing day, it's nice to look at a movie like Loving Vincent and think, yeah, humans did that. If Vincent ever saw this, I hope he would have liked it. This world was never meant for one as beautiful as you. Hey, remember when I gave a white hot take and said Your Name was my least favorite of Makoto Shinkai's Supernatural Disaster Trilogy? Well, it's because this one exists. Maybe it's because it's the first anime movie I loved before I started diving into Ghibli's work, but Wuthering With You genuinely is awesome. A young rebellious teenager named Hodoka, who's reading Catcher in the Rye at the beginning, clever detail there, runs away to Tokyo in the midst of the city experiencing a biblical deluge and meets and falls in love with a girl named Hina, who can magically pray away the rain and bring sunny skies. The body swapping plot in Your Name is fun, don't get me wrong, but the strange weather phenomena is really engaging, mainly because it coincides with Hodoka and Hina actually getting to spend time together and create a bond unlike Taki and Mitsuha. But there's other stuff too. Aside from our 2 lovebirds, the movie has other great, well-rounded characters. Though like Your Name, the animation is stunning, rainy, neon-lit Tokyo is absolutely gorgeous. There's more bangers from Radwimps, and like Suzume, I love my Makoto Shinkai cats. They're such little scamps. If you're looking for a rainy day movie, then Wuthering With You is the perfect choice. It was about time I started yapping about a cartoon saloon movie, isn't it? It's awfully rare to have a PG-13 animated movie, but my oh my is this a fantastic one. After her father is arrested with no charges, a young girl in Afghanistan named Parvana begins disguising herself as a boy in order to provide for her family. Like The Tower, it's an uncomfortable watch, but a necessary one, especially since these dehumanizing conditions are still affecting women and girls ever since the Taliban regained control in 2021, where they can't get an education, be outside without a male attendant, or even show their face in public. Despite being a heartbreaking look into the reality millions of Afghan women have to face, the film still manages to be incredibly powerful and uplifting since we're viewing the world from the eyes of a young girl. The scene of Parvana making the decision to cut her hair is executed with no dialogue, and it, ironically, speaks volumes. And when she actually does successfully buy food, she's elated even though she's being made fun of by the shopkeeper for not being very smart.
Should I go by my imagination?
Yes.
Not very bright, this one.
Parvana is one of my favorite child protagonists, and it's not hard to see why with her unrelenting determination, yet still feels like a believable child with the way she bickers with her sister. There's a couple people she interacts with while she's outside her home, but the one I love the most is her old school friend Shazia, who also disguises herself. She dreams of seeing the ocean, which puts things in perspective for me as someone who's lived near it my entire life. I'd take her and Parvana to the beach in a heartbeat. The film cuts back and forth between Parvana and the real world and a fantastical story she's telling her younger brother with a really unique cutout art style, which, might I add, they both transition one from the other beautifully. The main character in that tale is Sulaiman, who's voiced by the same actor as Idris, a teenager who adopted the extremist ideals of the Taliban. I think of Sulaiman being an alternate version of Idris, who instead grew into a courageous and fearless young man, not a brash kid sent off to war. Overall, The Breadwinner is an exceptional movie that you must see for yourself. Cartoon Saloon has continuously been hitting home runs, and this is certainly not the last time I'll be talking about one of their films. This is one of the most obscure movies on this list, but the good news is that you can watch it right here for free on YouTube. Now, if you recall from my Best Movies of 2023 video, I talked about this teeny tiny movie called Eyeballs in the Darkness, and then I was going to discuss its predecessor at a later date. This is that movie, and this is that time. I love the kinds of films that grow on me over time and get exponentially better with every viewing, and I'd say Tux and Fanny is the epitome of that for me. Just look at my rating for it get higher and higher. Ugh, beautiful, isn't it? Tux and Fanny is about, well, Tux and Fanny, two humanoid blobs that live together in the forest and go about their day-to-day lives, from stargazing, celebrating birthdays, adopting a flea-ridden cat, to tripping on shrooms, having their skin eaten off by ants, and entering a purgatory state after being sucked into a computer during a lightning storm. We've all been there. Oh, and even though this was produced in Delaware, they speak in Russian.
Жизнь – это бесконечная серия отказов и разочарований.
Don't look at me for an answer, I don't know either. It originally started as a web series on Instagram where each episode is a minute long, but eventually became available to watch on YouTube. And this movie consists of the first 80 or so episodes, while the sequel, Eyeballs in the Darkness, goes to 154, the latest one so far. There's even a video game I've been meaning to check out. The way I found it was on the official letterboxd list for highest rated animated movies a couple years ago, and it certainly deserves a spot on there. Since then, I've gotten my friends hooked on their misadventures. For any horror fans out there, you may have seen them in I Saw the TV Glow, in which the director Albert Burney was involved with some of the production. With its lo-fi VHS quality, you think it'd be darker and like analog horror. Well, I guess it could fit in the genre. It's quaint, yet quirky, yet existential, yet funny, yet melancholy, yet beautiful. I rewatched this the same day as It's Such a Beautiful Day and Don's other short films, and even though Tux and Fanny is overall more light in tone, I'd say it's a pretty good double feature. I got in quite the contemplative mood after it. I think I mentioned this in my Best Movies of 2023 video and said it feels like something you would stumble upon in a thrift store or garage sale. The cartoon sticker on the poster is such a perfect touch. I love the soundtrack as well, and it's one I listen to all the time too. I'm dying to learn Thawing Out on the piano someday. I finally got to use my Blu-ray of the movie for this video. It looked great, but I still need to get the one for Eyeballs in the Darkness. I can't wait to watch them with the director's commentary at some point. What I think is interesting to point out is that there are so many different mediums that are used in this movie. Of course you have the 8-bit style, but you also have stop motion, bizarre live action, and even some watercolor. One of my favorite scenes includes dozens of styles in the span of seconds. I should probably stop talking because I want to make a separate video on this, but if there was one movie I'd say I recommend the most since I desperately want more people to watch, then I say I hold this one in high regard, especially since, again, you can watch it right here on YouTube. I left a link to the movie and the entire channel in the description for you to check out, and I really hope you do. I'm just so passionate about it because of how much Indian web animation has been blowing up the past couple years, and it's sad to see Tux and Fanny haven't had their time in the sun yet. But hopefully this video will convince at least one person to check it out. I can't wait for the third movie when we become wind, and I am so ready for it whenever you are, Albert.
Может быть, это всего лишь сон. Но, по крайней мере, мы вместе в одной мечте.
I've come to a point in my life where I can't choose my singular favorite Christmas movie, Home Alone or this. But who cares about that, man? Oh my gosh, it's so nice to see a hand-drawn animated movie be released on something as big as Netflix, with Disney veteran Sergio Pablos and prominent actors behind it. This was directed by the guy who animated Frollo, so of course I'm not surprised it's so good. It's such a delightful and unique take on the origin of Santa Claus, featuring my beloveds Jason Schwartzman and J.K. Simmons. Jesper is basically Kuzco, and Mrs. Crumb is practically Yzma, but I love it. Margot is freaking adorable, and this will not be the last time I talk about a cute animated kid in this video. I think this is also one of the best comedies in recent years. Something about Jesper convincing himself to stay in Smearensburg still makes me crack up after my 6th or 7th viewing.
I'm going home! No, you can't leave, remember? You'll be broke out in the streets. But I hate it here.
The animation is absolutely dazzling, with a perfect marriage of classic hand-drawn and modern lighting techniques. I can't believe we haven't gotten more like this. The next movie from Spa Studios is kind of in production limbo right now, which sucks because I'm dying for a new movie from them. It's been almost 5 years, come on! Well, anyway, I'm not really fond of the pop song halfway through and the third act breakup, and Klaus talking like a caveman to becoming very articulate isn't really explained, even if it's acknowledged, but it's still a heartwarming and hilarious experience every time I watch it. The scene of Jesper and Margot sitting on the dock under the starry, starry night and him telling her to cheer up, little one. Oh my gosh, it just makes me melt into a puddle. Klaus has definitely found a place in my annual Christmas movie rotation, and I can't wait to see what Spa Studios does next. Whenever that may be. The first thing I want to say since making my stop motion ranking is that this movie is the reason why I'm a Beatles fan now. While making that video, I started listening to the cover of While My Guitar Gently Weeps that plays during the credits. Then it led to listening to the Love version with George Harrison and that beautiful string accompaniment. If I had kept up with playing the guitar, I definitely would be learning this song right now, though hopefully I can learn it on the piano someday. But then, since I mentioned Yellow Submarine earlier in that script, I started playing that song for the first time in years. And then I had rewatched Ferris Bueller's Day Off around that time, so I started listening to Twist and Shout, and basically a year later I've wound up playing Eleanor Rigby on a loop. Hot take, guys, the Beatles are good. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Kubo. It's still my favorite Leica movie, it's still my favorite stop motion movie, and I still regret not seeing it in theaters. Seeing how much care and craft went into this movie makes me wonder how we deserve films like these. I yapped about this in my video last year, and seeing how it's only number 9 here means this video can only go higher. I don't know what else to say. It's still a powerful, magical, emotionally resonant, and utterly delightful movie. It took me way too long to realize that the piece of resistance is the pièce de résistance of the movie, and that it's the piece that resists the Craggle from leaking out of its tube. Lord and Miller are writing geniuses, I can't deny it.
Police remover of naive.
This movie is now 10 years old, and I still can't believe it looks this fantastic. The scratches, the fingerprints, the overall wear and tear on the characters is simply astonishing. I'm sure there's people out there who still think it's stop motion. It's all in the choppy frame rate. The fact that everything we see in the Lego world is made up of Legos, I adore it. It feels wrong to admit how much I love Good Cop, Bad Cop, but Liam Neeson knocked it out of the park with his performance.
Sorry, Dad. I have a job to do.
I'll hold these guys off. You go stop them. Yay!
I really wish he would do more voice acting. He has such a cinematic voice that I could listen to it all day. You know the scene where he craggled his own parents? It's a terrifying concept when you think about it, and that's what I love about it. Remake this in a live action movie and it'd probably get an R rating, down to removing Good Cop's face. It's a shame he gets erased from the movie for so long though. I will say, Batman is an absolute riot. I freaking adore him. I really wish he got a spin-off or something. Just imagine how amazing that would be. On the topic of him though, if you stay around for all the credits, you get to hear the full version of Batman's song, brilliantly titled Untitled Self-Portrait.
Curtains drawn. In the basement. Middle of the night.
Mwah, a masterpiece in songwriting. This movie is too good. It's overflowing with creativity and I will never get enough of it. And this is coming from someone who never really played with Legos growing up. I know I had a few Playmobil sets. I wonder if they'll ever make a movie about that. Oh.
No. No. Oh, no. Hey, don't eat me. Don't eat me. Do not eat me. Please.
Something Will Ferrell voicing an animated villain. Something 2 nickels. The next movie is Megamind. Hear me out, okay? This movie really deserves its cult status. Who knew this early 2010s DreamWorks movie would age so gracefully? I mean, not everything, but from parodying a genre that is now very much oversaturated to calling out incels and r/nice guys, it's a blast from start to finish. This is also genuinely one of my favorite comedies. Human civilization does not deserve a film this hysterical.
Now it's time for some witty back and forth banter. You go first. My spider bite is acting up.
Bernard, I didn't know you had feelings.
Oh, my giant blue head!
Going back to the Lego movie for a second, since I watched it after Megamind while writing this video, during the opening scene I thought, oh yeah, this is Megamind I'm hearing, but soon after Will Ferrell does such a great job blending into the role that all I heard was, well, President/Lord Business. He's voicing cartoony villains, and obviously having different writers will help with that contrast, but they're still both different variations, and it's honestly astounding. This movie has other elements that are genuinely interesting to explore, like nature versus nurture, the desire for fulfillment in life, and if people born with great power should be forced to carry the great responsibility of helping others. Someone who's never seen it and thinks of it as a silly superhero movie may be laughing at me right now, but I'm serious. I was among the many who thought it was only pretty good when it first came out, but when it was on Netflix in 2019 and had its huge resurgence, I was among another group of many who realized how excellent it is. This is one of my favorite DreamWorks movies, and I truly believe it's a subversive masterpiece. But don't ask me about the Doom Syndicate, I do not care. Dehydration gun. There, you satisfied? You know how I said I wish there was a Lego Batman spin-off movie? You guys aren't going to believe it. For being a spin-off to the Lego movie, I guess it's a little inconsistent with how water and smoke are made of Legos, and that Batman hates working in a team all of a sudden, but I don't care. This movie is an absolute bona fide banger. I do agree the Lego movie has more of that modern classic aura, but I personally enjoy Lego Batman more by just a smidge. I just think it's funnier, and Batman and Joker becoming enemies to lovers, and Batman and Joker becoming enemies to enemies is really satisfying. Just kiss already. Will Arnett is top-notch as Batman, and I'm heartbroken we won't be able to hear him again. This and The Batman have really fueled my passion and fascination with the character. Not only do both movies have Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, but they also delve into Batman's psychology, emphasizing that loner and reclusive aspect of him, and that he is so ridiculously emo. I saw the previous Lego movie in theaters when I was 11, and I remember when Bruce Wayne showed up, I leaned over to my uncle and asked him who that was. Oh, how far I've come. But anyway, that's what I love about Batman, how I can have polar opposite but endlessly entertaining experiences with the same character, and it all depends on what I'm in the mood for. I'm thankful for this movie giving me my favorite iteration of Alfred. I love Michael Caine as much as the next guy, but Ralph Fiennes is just inspired casting. He's the reason why I've added indubitably to my vocabulary.
Happy now?
Indubitably.
I still find it confusing as to why he didn't voice Voldemort, but a trans woman replaced him, so take that, Joanne. Jenny Slate as Harley Quinn is also really great, and I would love to see her voice another version of this character at some point. I still mourn the loss of the cancelled sequel due to Universal buying the rights to Lego a few years ago, and only now figuring out what to do with it. I would have loved to see Batnet parody Pattinson, like telling him that even he thinks he broods too much. But with how sensational of a job Warner Bros. Has been doing with keeping animated projects afloat, maybe it's better it was cancelled before hundreds of people put thousands of hours of work into it just to end up getting erased from existence. May the film rest in pieces. Dare I say it, this should be called the Lego Batman film. So thank you to this film for making me fall in love with I Just Died in Your Arms by the Cutting Crew. Though I was already loving the song before it became a meme, thank you very much. One last thing. Everyone talks about how they miss Pixar bloopers, and don't worry, I do too. But we got Lego Movie ones right here and no one talks about them.
Evil army,
Holy
get rid of
moly.
Nice magicianing, Voldemort. What is it? Thank you, Marcus. Voldemort!
I do love this movie.
Me too, Ralph Fiennes. Me too. The next movie I'm discussing is truly one of a kind. It was a critical and financial success. It has a unique tone and art style. It won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature. Yet unlike the film you're probably thinking of, this didn't cause a paradigm shift in animation. Name's Rango. Aside from the next movie on this list, this is the one I've loved the longest. I've heard some say they thought it was too weird for them when they were younger, but I remember seeing it in theaters and I always thought it was great. Or maybe I was the weird kid. Even today, it's a breath of fresh air with how the character designs are so disgusting yet memorable, and how the animation is realistic yet stylistic. It was done by ILM, and they were going off doing stuff like this around that time, so yeah, it's no wonder it still looks as wonderful as it does. We need more mainstream animated movies that's rough around the edges like this. It wasn't until rewatching it for this video did I realize this was my introduction to westerns, and now I want to start watching more of them. Though technically this was my first watch, and what I mean by that is that I bought the brand new 4K steelbook of this movie that happened to come out around the same time I was writing this video, which meant I got to watch the extended version of this movie. It has a handful of jokes that were removed, and I could see why, but it includes the epilogue, where the town dirt is renamed to mud, and we get more of the metatextual hero's journey with Rango getting the sunset shot. I actually think it's kind of better because the conclusion makes it worth it.
Whoa! Where's my Tic Tacs? Oh, I found them.
It's a lot more satisfying by being a great curtain call for these characters who I kind of doubt we'll ever see again, rather than the theatrical version's rather abrupt ending. I guess the bright side is that the end credits with the banger surf guitar come sooner. But anyway, Rattlesnake Jake is such a great villain. I wish he had more screen time. I will never get over...
Try me.
Ugh, are scenes that go undeniably as hard as this common in other westerns? Have I just been missing out on them this entire time? I did watch Seven Samurai for the first time not too long ago, and that's been compared to westerns, so I guess that's a start. 2 Kurosawa references in one video. Wasn't expecting that. And yes, Seven Samurai. Awesome movie. But you know what's also awesome? The music of Rango, scored by, guess who? Hans Zimmer. The opening title not being on the soundtrack makes me want to gnaw my arm off, but it's one of my favorite intros to any movie ever. Yeah, it's just the company logos, the title card, and the mariachi owls going... 5 times, but it's that motherforking guitar that immediately gets me in the mood. I hear it and I go, oh, I'm ready for a fun time. It's another song I want to learn on the piano someday since I never really got the hang of playing guitar. We Ride, really, also slaps, and though the track when Rango crosses to the other side isn't Zimmer, it's Elfman, it still fits the scene very well. I love the silly little chameleon movie, okay? To this day, I'm puzzled by this movie's obsession with gross-out humor and bodily fluids and functions, but thankfully it's limited to just dialogue. I really want to make another separate video on this movie because I watched the special features and I'm utterly fascinated with its production, and yet despite being so successful, we don't have another movie like it. Like, what if I told you that the development stage took place in this house Gore Verbinski and some other crew members stayed and hung around in? I want to stay in the Rango frat house. This movie is as mysterious as Rango's name, so I tip my hat to you. One legend to another. When is she gonna get to number 1? Soon, compadre. Soon. Well, speaking of another 2011 animated movie that I adore.
Dear Diary, today I couldn't find my diary, so I'm writing this on both of my Kung Fu Panda 2 DVDs.
I love when sequels are so sensational you forget they have an entire other movie preceding them that is almost as sensational. I adore the first film as much as the next person, but I've been loyal to 2 for as long as I can remember. Why else would I have this hanging in my car? Lord Shen, the animation, Lord Shen, the soundtrack, Lord friggin' Shen. Let's start with Lord Shen. I haven't mentioned him yet. There has not been a DreamWorks villain as sublime as him since this movie's release. I know everyone loves Death and Jack Horner, but I'm sorry, not even the literal personification of Death or John Mulaney can beat this menacing, genocidal maniac for me. His character design is impeccable, Gary Oldman's performance is perfection, the fact that he wants to obtain power so bad he's willing to kill an entire species for it, and how that madness is perfectly captured in those beady little eyes of his. I do love that he's much more involved and physically present in the story than Tai Lung. He truly is the backbone of the film. You see it in the lighting with how scenes are always soaked in blood red, and hear it in the soundtrack with how dramatic and bombastic it is. Speaking of which, let's talk about that motherforking soundtrack. It's my favorite one from all the movies on this list. It's sensational whenever Shen is on screen, and Shen is sensational because he's backed up by said sensational soundtrack. They both complement each other beautifully, just like yin and yang. Ain't that poetic? John Powell and Hans Zimmer did such a marvelous job that of course they were snubbed for Best Original Score at the Oscars. Well, whether or not the 2 received recognition, it doesn't change the fact I would pay an ungodly amount of money to watch this movie with a live orchestra. Please do yourself a favor and check out the soundtrack. You will not regret it. But do it after you finish watching this video. You know, gotta keep up audience retention up or whatever. There's more to love than Shen, I swear. There's that awesome fight scene in the musician's village where the choreography is synced with the score, and I adore the shadow puppetry opening since it has such a unique art style. It's narrated by Mother of Mothers Michelle Yeoh, who I was introduced to by this movie. No, the soothsayer isn't the most complex character, but she's a natural at bringing in levity during Shen's scenes, and she has an interesting position in the story where she's a grounded sage character like Oogway. And even though she's working for the bad guy, she herself is not a bad guy. I love how she helps out Poe near the end. I also love that out of the Furies 5, it took Tigress the longest to warm up to Poe, but she's the one who ends up having the strongest bond with him. And on this most recent rewatch, I noticed when he gets sucker punched, Viper asks if he's okay, but she calls him Sweetie, and I was like, aww. Oh yeah, and Mr. Ping, the god among men that he is, adopting Poe and raising him as his own. We stan Mr. Ping in this household. That last scene with the 2 of them is just Jennifer Young Nelson did such a spectacular job directing this, and it absolutely pains me that DreamWorks is going the safe commercial route instead. You already had a commercial success on your hands. Are you stupid? I should not be getting this worked up about a franchise called Kung Fu Panda, but when you're telling me there's a possibility of getting more scenes like these and getting more villains like this, can you really blame me? Whatever. It's still one of my favorite movies and one of the best sequels in my humble opinion, so I will be watching and rewatching and listening and re-listening until the end of my days. Oh, and if you're wondering who uploaded the Lord Shen backdrops on the letterboxd, you're welcome. Y'all, I love this movie. I love this movie. It means so much to me. I saw this in theaters back when it came to the US in 2014. One of all 50 of them apparently, and I staggered out in a daze when it was over. With this being the second cartoon saloon film on this list, it's the reason why I'm so passionate about international animation today. It's a magical journey through Ireland and its mythology with absolutely gorgeous traditional animation, and it's another perfect movie to watch on a rainy day with a cup of chamomile tea. It's kind of an Irish-spirited way if you think about it. One, or in this case two, children come across fantastical creatures, encounter an old woman in a hut as she assists them with getting back home, and the main character grows from a bratty, whiny, borderline cruel child into a fearless, emotionally intelligent young man. It's so satisfying to witness. You see this in Ben's possessiveness of the shell his mother gave him the night she disappeared, but as the movie progresses, it shifts to genuine care and love for his sister Saoirse. There's a scene near the climax where something bad happens to both Saoirse and the shell, but Ben is only concerned about his sister, and it makes me go, damn right, Ben, that's what I like to see. There's this other great detail where early on their granny makes a move to Dublin with her, and Ben is crying because his dad and dog Coo can't come with them, but later when he gets separated from Saoirse, he immediately recomposes himself and starts looking for her. Studio Ghibli and Laika are known for their well-developed child protagonists, and I think Cartoon Saloon should be included in that conversation too. Speaking of Saoirse, can I just say that she is freaking adorable. It's incredible how the movie is able to convey the emotions and thoughts of a mute character. Her wide eyes and subtle facial expressions speak 1,000 words, so shout out to the animators. The mythological creatures are also really fun, mainly the Danashi, 3 musical fairies, the Great Shanaki, a keeper of stories that he holds in every strand of hair growing from him, and Maka, the misunderstood owl witch. My personal favorite is the Danashi because Dulamon is a bona fide bop.
Dulamon na pinapui, Dulamon na gwela, Dulamon na farika, paravi and Aaron.
It's weird to say this about the climax, the height of the story, but it's so relaxing yet hypnotic. Every time I finish watching this movie, I feel like I've been awakened from a pleasant dream, but part of me is also sad because I wish it would last longer. The soundtrack is yet another relaxing one I listen to a lot, especially the titular song of the sea. If I ever have kids, this will be one of, if not the first movie I'm showing them. Again, it's another exceptional pick for a rainy and/or autumn day that I cannot praise enough, so you have to see it for yourself.
Today's video is sponsored by PETA.
There's bound to be one person who's upset this is only number 2, but please, again, hear me out. With that being said, alright, let's do this one last time. Yeah, I mean, what else were you expecting? If you don't call the Lego Movie a modern classic, then surely this must be one in your eyes. I've been so caught up obsessing over Across the Spider-Verse the past year that I've forgotten, oh yeah, there was another cinematic masterpiece that came before it. Miles is such a baby in this, aww. I recently rewatched this in theaters again with tickets only costing $1, so you bet that bottom dollar I was gonna see it. We all know why this is sensational, so I want to go over small details that I love instead. When Miles asks his dad if cops run red lights, the camera doesn't cut to it since we can see it reflected on the window. When he complains about Vision's Academy being elitist, I love how Jefferson questions the usage of that word, as if he's surprised his young son is using such a sophisticated word.
I just think that this new school is elitist. And I would
The titles for Spider-Man's Christmas album slaps, but justice for Silent Night, you're welcome. Also, we were robbed of Spider-Pine. I would have loved to see more of him. Ugh. Rest in peace, man. I mentioned this in my spot video, but Miles' reaction to finding out Aaron is the Prowler is one of my favorite shots in the movie. I just love how his emotions were perfectly conveyed despite most of his face being covered. We have Daniel Pemberton's beautiful piano pieces when Peter B is reminiscing about MJ. I have the sheet music for one of them, I just need to learn it. Speaking of that scene, you can see his eyes welling up with the way his mask shakes. The seahorse quote is one of my favorites too. And the track that plays during the final scene is called Spider-Man Loves You. It feels so personal, like, oh, I love you too, man. Also, Kingpin put a self-destruct button on his own Inator. LOL, is he stupid? I love when Aunt May dramatically kicks open the back door of her own house and we get Gwen's small reaction. It's perfect. It never fails to make me laugh. She kicked the screen door too, oh my gosh. And I love Peter B's arc of him becoming fit to be a father. That's the reason why he and MJ divorced, but with him mentoring Miles slowly but surely makes him realize that he's actually pretty good with kids. We don't even realize it was an arc until the climax when he tells Miles that he's so proud of him and asks himself if he wants kids. And then later he reflexively puts his hand on Miles's back out of protection, and it's so adorable. I have a lot of good theater experiences with this movie. Of course, they're seeing it live in concert, as I've mentioned multiple times in multiple other videos. At the Dollar showing, there was a little boy 2 seats away from me wearing a Miles suit, and I heard this from him at one point.
We all make choices in life.
It doesn't feel like I have a choice.
You don't!
You do. And even back when the movie came out, I saw it with 2 of my friends, and though we weren't Spider-Man or Marvel fans, we went out because we heard how cool the animation was. This was my first Spider-Man movie. I knew next to nothing about him, and I was afraid I wasn't going to know what was going on, but thankfully that opening scene reassured me, and the rest is history. Oh, and also their wide-eyed reactions to Dr. Olivia Octavius, and my friends actually call me Liv. My enemies call me Doc Ock. I'll never forget that. I'm so glad this movie exists. I'm so glad this movie made me a Spider-Man fan. I'm so glad this movie shook up the animation industry the way it desperately needed to. I've watched this film countless times, and I'll watch it countless more. Without further ado, I introduce you to my #1 favorite animated movie of the 2010 decade. Here's a fun fact. This is the only movie on this list to make me cry. Maybe that's not saying much because there's only a few on here that would be considered tearjerkers, but when I add in the fact that I rarely cry at movies, maybe says a little bit more. But that's not the sole reason why it's #1. The legendary Studio Ghibli director and co-founder Isao Takahata graced us with one final movie before his passing. Based on another one of Asia's oldest stories, this time being the tale of the bamboo cutter from Japan. The movie's about that old bamboo cutter and his wife finding a little girl inside a stalk of shining bamboo and raising her as if she were their own. But as Kaguya grows up quickly, everything changes when he believes she deserves a life of luxury, and that leads to suitors, among others, knocking at her door. Without giving away spoilers, this movie is out of this world. Technically, this should be the first anime movie I fell in love with, since I saw it long before Weathering with You, in theaters back in 2014 actually. The little 11-year-old me thought it was only pretty good. But now as I'm older, it eviscerates my heart and leaves me a shattered mess by the end. Kaguya's agency and humble childhood is ripped away from her piece by piece, and it saddens me to witness it every time. I mean, it's engaging, but it's still sad, and you're with her every step of the way. She deserves the world. She overhears some losers degrading her at a banquet that's being celebrated for her, and it results in one of the finest scenes in animation where she bursts out of the mansion in rage. As her robes fly off layer by layer, the environment reflects her emotions, something we haven't seen executed in animated movies elsewhere until very recently. It's such a brief yet undoubtedly powerful moment. The animation in general is fabulous, emulating the works of ukiyo-e with its vibrant watercolor, rough charcoal line work, and use of negative space. If you can't tell already, I love seeing different art styles from across history come to life. That's what is so sensational about Takahata's work. I'm not a fan of all of his movies, but they push the boundaries of what animation can do while bringing out such extreme emotions in me. And I feel so many of them just within this movie. I love seeing young Kaguya playing with her friends in the countryside and her spinning around under the cherry blossom tree. And yet I hate seeing the simpleton suitors blindly falling head over heels for her just because they heard she's pretty and they don't have any interest in getting to know her as a human being. But all of it is so fascinating to unfold. As each suitor attempts to win her over, her mental stability declines, where she goes from laughing it off, her hands trembling, to breaking down sobbing. Kaguya is one of my favorite female characters because she remains outspoken in a world trying to bring her down. I see a lot of her in Rose from Titanic with how they try so desperately to gain agency when their high-class lifestyles are being forced upon them, and they want to do nothing but run away with the boy they love because Jack and Demaru symbolize that freedom for them. And while I'll admit they have varying degrees of success with that, they remain engaging as ever. The scene of Kaguya singing the Song of the Heavenly Maiden is another one of my favorites. With nothing but her voice and her koto, she reminisces about a distant memory she feels this immense yearning for. I will want to return to you. This is also one of my favorite dubs, with an awfully stacked voice cast. Chloe Grace Moretz is fantastic as the princess herself, perfectly capturing the joy and suffering of the character. James Caan is great as the loving but very misguided bamboo cutter, and Mary Steenburgen is the wife, and I love how motherly she is. Her voice kind of reminds me of Susan Sarandon's, and they both have a comforting quality to it that makes me want to listen to them all day. We also have Lucy Liu, John Cho, and Daniel Day Kim in minor roles, but they're still really fun to watch. Overall, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya makes me feel every emotion under the sun, but leaves me an empty shell by the end, and I love the movie for that. It's being re-released in theaters late next month in November thanks to G-Kids' annual Ghibli Fest, which means I'll finally have the chance to see it on the big screen again. So do yourself a favor and treat yourself to one of the very best animated films of all time. And those are my top 30 best animated movies of the 2010s. In my personal opinion, it was kind of unconventional, wasn't it? There were some that were lower down the list, but also some you may be surprised I mentioned in the first place. I'm sure some people only care about the mainstream releases, but if one person checks out even one of the lesser known films and loves it, then that's all that matters to me. If you do check out one of the indie movies from this list, let me know, as well as your favorites from the 2010 decade. If you couldn't already tell, Letterboxd has helped me immensely in finding ones that are outside the mainstream, and it truly is a great way to do so. This isn't sponsored or anything, I swear, I just genuinely love that app. Though, Letterboxd, if you do reach out, I wouldn't complain. Insert shameless plug or something, I don't know, follow me on there. Also, I have a list version of this video on there, so I'll have that in the description. I would love to make more videos like this for other decades. I'm planning to do one for the 2020s on what has come out so far next year in 2025. Oh my gosh, how are we already halfway there? Though the furthest I could probably go back to is the 90s, because at that point any further I'll mainly be listing off Disney movies I'm pretty meh on, and most of the international ones I have seen aren't exactly my cup of tea. Call it recency bias, call it whatever, sue me. In the meantime, check out these movies, and if you enjoyed this video, please comment, like, subscribe, and join my Patreon to support my channel, and I will see you later. Okay, bye!